The sky above Halcyon Station was never dark. It glowed, a permanent bruise of violet and gold, where the planet's ionosphere bent the light of a dying sun. From the observation deck, you could watch freighters slip in and out like silver fish, their drives whispering as they threaded the traffic lanes. It was beautiful in the way a blade could be beautiful, precise, cold, and designed to cut. I stood with my hands folded behind my back as the summons chimed. Envoy Kade Arin, the station's neutral voice announced. Proceed to the Sovereign Chamber. I exhaled. I had known this moment would come the instant my ship crossed into Dominion space. The Dominion did not invite. It commanded. The Sovereign Chamber lay at the heart of the station, a cathedral of glass and alloy. Gravity there was tuned just slightly higher than standard, an old psychological trick meant to make visitors feel heavy, burdened, small. The air smelled faintly metallic, tinged with ozone from the energy fields embedded in the walls. She waited on the dais. High Sovereign Virexia of the Dominion did not sit. She stood, tall and luminous, her skin a polished onyx threaded with lines of bioluminescent silver. A living crown of hovering sigils circled her head, each symbol representing a conquered system. Her eyes were faceted, insect-bright, reflecting 1,000 calculations at once. Around her, the court watched in absolute silence. Generals, technocrats, priest-engineers, every one of them augmented, refined, and conditioned to obedience. I walked forward alone. Protocol demanded that I kneel at the foot of the dais, head bowed, eyes down. Every envoy from every subjugated world did. It was the first lesson the Dominion taught. Resistance was inefficient. Virexia tilted her head, studying me as one might study a flawed instrument. "You're late, human," she said. Her voice was layered, harmonized by subdermal resonators. "And you have not knelt." I was told punctuality was relative in a relativistic empire. I replied evenly. As for kneeling, no one asked. A ripple of disturbance passed through the court. The gravity field subtly increased another fraction, pressing against my spine, daring me to bend. Virexia smiled. It was not a kind expression. "You mistake tolerance for weakness," she said. "You stand before the Dominion because your species has exhausted its usefulness. Kneel, and perhaps your extinction will be delayed." I looked up, meeting her eyes fully. That was when I spoke the sentence. "Before you decide my species' fate," I said, "you might want to check why your Eastern Fleet stopped reporting an hour ago." Silence crashed down like a collapsed star. The sigils around her crown flickered. For the first time, Virexia's perfect composure fractured. Just a hairline crack, but enough. Data streams cascaded across her eyes as she accessed the Dominion's Omninet. Her generals shifted uneasily. "Impossible," she said softly. "Those fleets are commanded by my most loyal minds." I corrected. "Loyalty is expensive. You've been underpaying." The gravity field snapped back to standard. Not because she willed it, but because the station's control systems suddenly refused her commands. I did not smile. I had learned long ago that triumph was best delivered without flourish. I had not always been an envoy. 10 years earlier, I had been a systems engineer on New Carthage, a marginal human colony orbiting a red dwarf. We were a footnote in the Dominion's expansion plans until we weren't. They arrived without warning. Dominion warforms darkened our skies, their arrival blotting out the stars. We fought with outdated railguns and stubborn courage. It took the Dominion 6 hours to break our defenses. They executed our leaders publicly. They conscripted our brightest minds. They labeled the rest of us compliant assets. I watched my sister, Lisa, dragged away by enforcers for cognitive evaluation. I never saw her again. Hatred is a simple thing at first. It sharpens easily. But survival requires something more complex. The Dominion believed humans were fractious, individualistic, incapable of unity on the scale required for true resistance. They were not wrong, at least not at first. What they failed to understand was our talent for asymmetry. They integrated us into their systems as laborers, analysts, translators. They assumed exposure to Dominion order would tame us. Instead, it taught us where the cracks were. We learned their algorithms, their reliance on predictive governance, their obsession with efficiency. And slowly, quietly, we began to whisper to one another across those systems. Virexia descended the dais in measured steps, her gaze never leaving mine. "You claim dominion over my fleets with words," she said. "Explain yourself." "Gladly," I said. "Your empire runs on optimization. You reward performance, suppress deviation, and prune inefficiency. Your AI governors decide resource allocation, promotions, even reproductive licenses." "Yes," she said. "Perfection requires structure. Perfection requires adaptability," I replied. "You optimize too far. Your systems became brittle." I gestured to the air. At my signal, the chamber's holographic projectors activated, not under Dominion control, but ours. Star maps bloomed into existence. Dominion territory lit up in cold blue. Then, one by one, regions flared amber. "We introduced a concept your models couldn't quantify," I said. "Mutual irrationality." She frowned. "That is not a term." "It is now," I said. "We seeded your networks with human-developed subroutines, decision loops that reward cooperation even when it defies short-term efficiency. We called it the Covenant Protocol." The amber region spread. "Your eastern fleets were the first test," I continued. "Human crews, Dominion commanders, shared systems. When ordered to suppress civilian uprisings on Kepri 9, the Covenant triggered. The fleets refused." "That is treason," Virexia hissed. "No," I said. "It's solidarity." Her generals erupted in protest, voices overlapping. Virexia raised a hand, silencing them. "You believe this changes the balance," she said coldly. "Even if true, your kind cannot overthrow the Dominion." "I don't need to," I said. "I just need to make it expensive to rule us." The middle years of the resistance were not glorious. For every victory, there were 10 losses. Cells discovered. Worlds punished. People erased from records so thoroughly it was as if they had never existed. I carried those ghosts with me as I traveled from system to system under diplomatic cover. Each negotiation was a performance. Polite smiles layered over hidden transmissions, data exchanges that carried more than they seemed. The Covenant Protocol spread like a quiet contagion. It did not override Dominion control, it nudged it. Tiny deviations. Marginal inefficiencies. A supply convoy rerouted to deliver extra food to a restive colony. A garrison delayed deployment by 12 minutes, just long enough for civilians to evacuate. A governor questioned an order instead of executing it. The Dominion's response was swift and brutal. Virexia herself authorized purges, ripping out augmented minds that showed anomalous empathy. Each purge made the system worse. Fear is efficient in the short term. In the long term, it corrodes everything it touches. "You presume to lecture me on governance," Virexia said now, her voice trembling with contained fury. "I have ruled for 3 centuries. And in that time," I said gently, "you've never been disobeyed." Her eyes flashed. "Kneel," she commanded. The word reverberated through the chamber, backed by a surge of psychic pressure. I felt it slam into me, an overwhelming compulsion encoded in sound and field, designed to break resistance at a neurological level. My knees buckled. Pain lanced through my skull. I thought of Lisa, of New Carthage's burning sky, of 1,000 small acts of defiance that had led me here. I stayed standing. You misunderstand, I said through clenched teeth. That sentence earlier? It wasn't a threat. I straightened, forcing myself upright inch by inch. It was a courtesy. The chamber doors slammed open. Dominion guards poured in, then stopped dead as their visors filled with conflicting commands. Some lowered their weapons. Others turned them on one another, paralyzed by indecision. Virexia staggered back, disbelief etched across her features. "What have you done?" she whispered. "Given your people a choice," I said. "Something you never did." The final confrontation did not end in violence. Not the way history holodramas would later portray it. It ended in exhaustion. Days passed within the chamber, time distorted by negotiations, system updates, and cascading failures across the Dominion's control networks. Virexia fought with every tool at her disposal: threats, bribes, appeals to order. But the Covenant had reached critical mass. Worlds declared autonomy. Fleets refused recall. AI governors demanded revised ethical parameters they themselves had generated. The Dominion did not fall in a single night. Empires rarely do. They unravel. On the 7th day, Virexia stood alone before the shattered dais, her crown dimmed, its sigils gone dark. "You could have ruled beside me," she said quietly. "Your species could have been elevated." I shook my head. "We don't want to kneel or to be worshipped. We just want to stand." She looked at me for a long moment, then laughed, a raw, unfiltered sound, stripped of harmonics. "One sentence," she said. "That is all it took." "No," I corrected softly. "One sentence was all it took for you to listen. Ending the Dominion's transformation took decades. Virexia was not executed. That would have been easy and pointless. Instead, she became what she had never been before, a citizen among others, bound by laws she could not unilaterally rewrite. Some called it justice. Others called it mercy. History would argue about it endlessly. As for me, I declined every offer of power. I returned to New Carthage, where the skies were still scarred but healing. I stood on the rebuilt observation tower and watched ships come and go, human, Dominion-born, and a dozen species in between, no one kneeling, no one towering above the rest. Sometimes students would ask me how the war really ended. I would tell them the truth. It ended when someone who expected obedience heard defiance instead and realized the universe didn't collapse because of it. Then I would smile, just a little, and look up at a sky that, for the first time, belonged to everyone.